Good evening, everybody. My name is Katelyn Goorhouse, and I will be talking about checklists for this week's presentation for our PRM 613 Project Integration and Quality Management course. So just a general overview. First, I'm going to start off with describing what a checklist is, kind of talking about the purpose that it serves. Going to provide you guys the PMBOK guide location. We're going to go into some advantages and disadvantages of using a checklist. Additionally, we're going to talk about alternative tools that serve similar purposes, and then some examples of how checklists can be used in our Acme project for this class. And then I'm going to end with trying to apply this tool outside of class for just kind of a different example. And then just the sources, of course. So going in for the definitions, Webster's dictionary states that a checklist is a list of things to be checked or done. Rose, one of the books used in this 613 class, states that a checklist is used to establish things to do. And then PMI, our PMBOK guide, states that a checklist is a list of items, actions, or points to be considered. And I don't have the purpose written down, but the purpose of a checklist is basically used to ensure that no steps or items are forgotten. It improves the efficiency by minimizing mistakes and can also be used as kind of like a step-by-step tool to be followed. And then after the step is done, you can check that off on the checklist and then go to the next step. So where can you find more about checklists within our beautiful PMBOK guide? I have the pages listed here for you, and they have a special quality checklist portion just for quality as well on page 292 and 718 in the PMBOK guide. So some general advantages of a checklist. It helps you keep track of things you need to get accomplished. It's a good way to review your project before moving on to the next step. It can save space in your brain because you don't have to keep it all in there and trying to remember, did I do this yet? Did I do that now? Did this person do this? If you're using a checklist, you can see if something was checked off or crossed off that yes, we've completed that and we can go to the next step. And then it can also be used as a delegation tool. Stephanie, if you want to do, 1 through 5 on the checklist, George, if you want to do, 6 through 8 on the checklist, you could use the checklist to delegate that way. And then it can also help you reach goals faster because you're held accountable for where you are at in the checklist. And I got this from a paper from Mock. And then same source, some disadvantages. This method may not work for the big picture person. I feel like a checklist is maybe for someone who obviously, it likes to follow step by step, and checklists just don't work for everybody, and that's okay. There's plenty of other tools people can use to get a job done. It just depends on your own personal preference. It can make people feel boxed in. And a personal example I wanted to use for this, every year people do New Year's resolutions. And for whatever reason, I was like, I'm going to read, 52 books this year. And I made a list of all of the books I wanted to read. And I've always been a list person myself in general. And I felt like I had to keep going down the list in the order of which I wrote it. So I can understand how some people could feel a little bit boxed in once they make the checklist. It's like, well, no, now I have to follow this because I said I was going to. It doesn't expand on any explanations. Your checklist is pretty to the point. And then it's easy to overlook what is not in front of you. So, I thought this was interesting when I was trying to look up disadvantages, but I feel like it's true. I feel like if you're so focused on just checking off what's next, you maybe could blocking yourself into not having maybe more of an open mind to other things that maybe weren't on the checklist that maybe should have been and you didn't add, but now you're committed to the checklist you've already made. So I thought that was interesting as a potential disadvantage. And then just some alternative tools that serve the same purpose. So I've been a lifelong checklist maker. I love to check things off, and so honestly, one of my favorite tools that I like to use is within. I'm an Apple user, so I have an iPhone, and it's nice because within the Notebook app, um, it gives you the option to create a checklist. If you just go down to the bottom and there's a little check mark, it will automatically open up a circle, and then you can keep going down and make your own checklist in your phone. So that's super helpful. There's also, it's called a Tick Tick app. I really like this app because you obviously an application, you can put it on your phone, but you can use a desktop version, and it's on obviously any computer if you just go on the internet and sign in. So it's nice that it is available to you basically anywhere you have a computer or any kind of smart device. And then also a standard operating procedure. It has the same purpose. So I used to work in a laboratory, and checklists were a great way for us to make sure that we were doing the right step at the right time. And so we definitely used standard operating procedures that can also be a checklist as well. And then some examples of checklists within our Acme event project. I think a good place to use a checklist would be, kind of breaking it up into all the things that you and your team need to do before the events, scheduling team meetings, reviewing the lessons learned log, if there is one, plan, what kind of safety are we going to have? Who's taking charge of that? Is that on our checklist? Are we focusing on that? Did we choose our food vendors? Oh, we didn't do that yet. Well, we need to make sure we do that so we can check it off the list. Then, have a checklist for during, like the day of, are all of the vendors set up, where they're supposed to be? Okay, check, we have that done. Okay, did somebody bring all the wristbands? Did somebody need to go get those yet? Check off the list. Then a separate one for after the event happened. Set up our after action meeting, what worked well, what didn't. Okay, check that box, we did that. Now, we want to also set up another meeting to analyze the survey results that we collected from the day of. So things like that, I think, would be very helpful. And obviously you can, have a very broad checklist, or you can break it down into a very nitty gritty, very focused, smaller scope checklist. You can kind of just mold it to what you and your team need at that time, and again, personal preference. And then using a checklist in action. So when I was a flight medic, we had checklists. I mean, I know for aviation, pilots, they always have a checklist. It's huge for safety. So it's called the read then do method. So when you're learning, you're, reading your checklist. Okay, I need to set up the electrical on the aircraft. Here's how I'm going to do that. Okay, check, check. And then you're looking at your checklist again. Okay, I did that. I verified that I did it. And now I'm going to move on to the next step. And then another safety and quality measure we always made sure is you always had to make sure you were on the right page of your checklist. And if you were caught not on the correct page, and they knew that you were not on the correct page, so let's say you were already in the flight, but you were still back a few pages, and it, talked about setting up the oxygen. Well, you of course would have had to set up the oxygen before you ever took off, had wheels up in the air. So you would have definitely been dinged for that from a safety perspective on the aircraft. So, and I also pulled that from McKay 2020. So super big in safety. Checklists can be an absolute godsend for safety and quality. And then I just have my sources here if you guys want to check them out. I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and have a good evening. Thanks, guys.